Adanna's hands trembled as she pried open the wooden burial chamber, the sound of splintering wood cutting through the midnight silence. Her fingers closed around cold metal, a golden bracelet meant to accompany Chief Okonkwo's wife into the afterlife. "Forgive me," she whispered to the corpse below, shoving the jewelry into her wrapper and running into the darkness. 3 days earlier, Adanna had been a different woman. She sat outside her hut as the moneylender, Mazi Okoli, loomed over her with eyes like a vulture circling dying prey. "Your husband's debt must be paid, woman. 5 bags of cowries by the next market day, or this hut becomes mine," he said, his voice cold and final. "Please, Mazi, my children, they have nowhere else to go. Just give me more time." Adanna fell to her knees, but Mazi Okoli had already turned his back. 3 days, not one more sunrise. That night, Adanna gathered her children close. 10-year-old Neka stared at her with knowing eyes that had seen too much suffering. 7-year-old Ameka clutched his hollow belly, too weak even to cry. Baby Amara whimpered in her arms, her lips cracked from hunger. "Mama, are we going to die?" Neka asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question pierced Adanna's heart like a poisoned arrow. She had begged every relative, every neighbor, every person who had once called her friend. They had all turned away, their doors closing one by one, their excuses falling like dead leaves. Her husband Chidi had been dead for only 6 months, but the world had already forgotten them. "No, my child, Mama will find a way, I promise you." But what way? That night, as her children slept fitfully on empty stomachs, Adanna sat in the darkness and remembered. 2 days ago, the entire village had gathered for the burial of Mama Ife, the chief's wife. Adanna had watched as they lowered her into the earth, adorned with gold bracelets, coral beads, and ceremonial cloth worth more than Adanna would see in 10 lifetimes. Wealth meant to honor the ancestors, treasures for the journey beyond. "The dead have no use for gold," a dark voice whispered in her mind. "But your children need to eat." Adanna squeezed her eyes shut, trying to silence the thought. But hunger has a way of drowning out conscience. By the time the moon reached its peak, she had made her decision. The burial ground stood at the edge of the village, separated from the living by a grove of iroko trees. Everyone knew the stories, the warnings passed down through generations. The dead must not be disturbed. The boundary between worlds must be respected. To steal from the ancestors was to invite a curse that could consume not just the thief, but their entire bloodline. But Adanna's children were dying, and so she crossed that boundary. Her first theft took hours. She dug with her bare hands, every scrape against wood making her heart nearly burst from her chest. When she finally held Mama Ife's golden bracelet, tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but they're just children." The next morning, she walked 3 villages away, to a market where no one knew her face. The trader barely looked at her as he weighed the gold. 20 cowries, he said. It wasn't enough to pay the full debt, but it was enough to buy time and food. When Adanna returned home with yam, dried fish and palm oil, her children stared at the food as if seeing a miracle. "Mama, where did you get this?" Neka asked, suspicion creeping into her young voice. "A distant aunt remembered us. Eat, my children, just eat." As they devoured their first real meal in weeks, Adanna told herself it was over. One theft, one sin. She could live with that burden, but poverty is a beast that's never satisfied with a single meal. 2 weeks later, Mazi Okoli returned. "The rest of my money, woman, now." This time, Adanna didn't hesitate. That night, she returned to the burial ground, to the fresh grave of Mazi Udoka, a merchant buried just 3 days before. The digging was easier now, her conscience quieter. She took his beaded necklaces, ceremonial anklets, even the fine cloth wrapped around his body. "You're dead," she muttered to the corpse. "You don't need these anymore." Another market, more money, the debt paid in full. Her children's bellies stayed full for the first time since their father died. Then came the third theft, and the fourth, and the fifth. She no longer waited for desperation to drive her. The stealing became routine, almost easy. She learned which graves held the most value, which families buried their dead with the finest treasures. She became efficient, careful, bold. Within 2 months, Adanna had more wealth than she'd ever known. Her children wore new clothes. Their cheeks grew round. The village whispered about her sudden fortune, but she smiled and claimed a distant relative had died, leaving her an inheritance. Only Neka watched her mother with troubled eyes. But the ancestors were watching too. It started small. Adanna noticed her shadow one morning, how it seemed to lag behind her movements, falling a heartbeat too slow. She blinked, and it was normal again, just her imagination. Then came the whispers. Soft voices in empty rooms, words she couldn't quite understand, like hearing a conversation through thick walls. She would spin around to find nothing, no one. The whispers followed her to the market, to the stream, into her own hut at night. "Mama," little Amara said one evening, pointing to the corner of the room, "who is that woman?" Adanna saw only shadows. "There's no one there, little one. You're dreaming." But Neka saw her too. "Mama, why is there always someone standing behind you?" "An old woman in white cloth." Ice flooded Adanna's veins. "Stop this foolishness, both of you. There's no one there." Yet she felt it now, a presence hovering just beyond her vision, a weight pressing against her back wherever she went. At the market, an old woman she had never seen grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. The woman's eyes were milky white, unseeing, yet knowing. "They know what you've done, daughter. The dead are not silent. They are not blind." Adanna yanked her hand away and fled, her heart hammering against her ribs. The dreams began that night. She stood in the burial ground, surrounded by open graves. From each one, figures rose. Mama Ife, still wearing her burial shrouds, golden wrist bare where her bracelet should be. Mazi Udoka, his neck naked without his beaded necklaces. A dozen others. All those she had robbed, all those whose rest she had disturbed. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. Their hollow eyes said everything. Thief, desecrator, cursed. Adanna woke screaming. If you're enjoying this tale of consequences and redemption, please like this video and subscribe for more African folk tales. Drop a comment below telling us what you think Adanna should do. Now, back to the story. Night after night, the dreams intensified. The dead surrounded her, their fingers pointing, their mouths moving in silent accusation. She stopped sleeping. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her hands shook constantly. She snapped at her children, jumped at every sound. "Mama, what's wrong with you?" Neka pleaded. "You're scaring us." "Nothing is wrong." But Adanna's voice cracked with the lie. Then came the night everything changed. Adanna woke to find her hut freezing cold, though the season was warm and no wind blew. Her breath came out in visible clouds. Every hair on her body stood on end. And there, sitting in the corner of her hut, was Mama Ife. The chief's wife looked exactly as she had in burial, wrapped in white cloth, her skin grey and waxy. But her eyes were alive, burning with an otherworldly fire. Adanna tried to scream. No sound escaped her lips. She tried to move. Her body refused to obey. "Peace, Adanna," Mama Ife's voice echoed, as if coming from a deep well. "I have not come to harm you, not yet." Other figures materialized around the hut. All the dead she had robbed, all the graves she had violated, crowding into the small space until Adanna felt she would suffocate from their presence. "Please," Adanna finally managed to whisper, "please, I was desperate. My children were starving. I had no choice." "There is always a choice," Mama Ife said, "and every choice carries consequence. You have violated the sacred boundary between the living and the dead. You have stolen what was meant to honor us, to ease our journey. You have shown the ancestors nothing but contempt. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll return everything, I'll make it right. Will you? Another spirit stepped forward, Mazi Udoka. With what? You've spent our treasures, traded our honor for yam and fish. Tears streamed down Adanna's face. Then tell me what to do. Punish me, kill me if you must, but please spare my children. They're innocent in this. Are they? Mama Eve's voice grew colder. Look. The spirits parted, and Adanna saw a vision that made her soul scream. Her children, grown into adults, surrounded by shadows that moved independently, chased by whispers they couldn't escape. They aged before her eyes, having children of their own, and those children were haunted too. 7 generations of her bloodline, all cursed, all paying for her sins. No, no, please, not them. Take me. Curse only me. The curse is already set in motion, Mama Ife said. Once awakened, it cannot be easily undone. Your children will suffer, their children will suffer. 7 generations will know no peace, will find no rest, will be followed by misfortune and shadows until the debt is paid. Adanna collapsed to her knees, her body racked with sobs. There must be a way. Please, there must be something I can do. The spirits were silent for a long moment. Finally, Mama Ife spoke again. There is one path, one chance to break the curse before it fully takes root, but the price will be high. Anything, I'll do anything. 3 tasks before the full moon rises 3 nights from now. 3 impossible tasks. Complete them all and your children go free. Fail even one, and the curse stands for 7 generations. Do you accept? Yes, I accept. Then listen well, Mama Ife said. First, you must return to every grave you violated and restore what you took, or its equal value, every single one. Second, you must spend 1 full night in the burial ground, from dusk to dawn, without light or protection, facing whatever comes. And third, hardest of all, you must confess your crimes publicly to the entire village at sunrise after the 3rd night, accepting whatever judgment they decree. Adanna's blood ran cold. Public confession meant disgrace, punishment, possibly death. But her children's faces flashed before her eyes. I accept. The spirits faded like morning mist, and Adanna found herself alone in her hut, the warmth returning, the first light of dawn creeping through the cracks in the walls. She had 3 days. The first task nearly broke her. Adanna sold everything she owned, her cooking pots, her good wrapper, her sleeping mat, everything her thefts had bought. She borrowed money from anyone who would lend, promising repayment she had no way to guarantee. She worked like a woman possessed, gathering items of equal value to replace what she had stolen and sold. That first night, she returned to Mama Ife's grave. With trembling hands, she dug once more, but this time to return, not to take. She placed a new golden bracelet beside the skeletal hand and spoke through her tears. Mama Ife, I return what I took. I am sorry, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. She moved from grave to grave, returning beads, cloth, jewelry, whispering apologies to each spirit, speaking their names with reverence. By dawn she had visited 12 graves, her hands bloody, her body exhausted. But the first task was complete. The second night was worse. As the sun set, Adanna entered the burial ground and sat in its center, surrounded by the homes of the dead. She brought no lamp, no fire, no protection charms. Just herself and the darkness. The night stretched endlessly. Shadows moved between the graves, taking shapes that made her mind scream. She heard her name whispered by a dozen voices. Felt cold hands brush against her skin. Saw faces in the darkness, some familiar, some horrifying and strange. The spirits tested her, showed her visions of death and decay, reminded her of mortality and consequence. But she did not run. She did not break. She sat through it all, weeping, praying, enduring, until the first light of dawn broke across the sky. 2 tasks complete. 1 remained. The third night, Adanna barely slept. Tomorrow at dawn she would have to face the village, confess everything, and accept whatever came. Death, probably. Exile at best. But her children would be free. As the full moon set and the sun began to rise, she walked to the village square. People were already gathering for the morning market. She climbed onto the raised platform where announcements were made, where judgments were pronounced. "People of Umuez," her voice shook but carried, "I have something to confess." The crowd grew silent. Chief Okonkwo stepped forward, his face stern. "Speak then, woman." And Adanna spoke. She told them everything, every theft, every grave, every lie. She watched their faces transform from confusion to shock to fury. She heard the gasps, the cries of outrage, the calls for her blood. "I violated your dead. I dishonored the ancestors. I stole from those who could not defend themselves. I am guilty of all these things." Her voice broke. "I ask no mercy for myself. I deserve whatever punishment you decree, but I beg you, please, let my children be judged innocent. They knew nothing. They are not guilty of my sins." The crowd erupted. Voices screamed for justice, for her death. Chief Okonkwo's face was dark with rage. His wife's grave, the first she had robbed. "You dare confess this? You dare speak of your crimes against my wife, against all our loved ones?" His hand moved to the machete at his belt. Adanna bowed her head, ready for the blade, but then a voice cut through the chaos. "Wait!" Mama Ekena, the oldest woman in the village, pushed through the crowd. She was ancient, her back bent, her hair white as cotton, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "I knew," she said simply. The crowd gasped. "The ancestors came to me in dreams. They showed me what she had done, and they showed me something else, something all of you have forgotten." Mama Ekin's gaze swept across the villagers. "Do you remember when Adanna came to you, begging for help? When her children were starving and she had nowhere to turn? Each of you closed your doors. Each of you turned away from a widow and orphans in your own village." Shame rippled through the crowd. People looked at their feet. "She was wrong," Mama Ikene continued, "gravely, terribly wrong. But are we blameless? We failed her first. We forgot the ways of community, of caring for our own." Chief Okonkwo's hand fell from his machete. His wife's face flashed in his memory, her kindness, her constant reminders to help those in need. "Mama Ikene speaks truth," he said finally. "My wife would have helped Adanna. She would be ashamed of us all." He turned to Adanna, his face hard but no longer murderous. "You have committed a grave crime. The law says death for such desecration." Adanna nodded, accepting. "But," the chief continued, "you have also confessed freely when you could have remained hidden. You have tried to make amends. And we too bear guilt in this matter." He looked to the elders. "What say you?" The elders huddled, speaking in low voices. Finally, they announced their judgment. "Adanna will serve as keeper of the burial grounds for 7 years. She will tend every grave, maintain every plot, guard the resting places she once violated. She will live at the boundary between village and burial ground, neither fully among the living nor the dead. And her children will remain in the village, cared for by the community, their names cleared of shame." Adanna collapsed in relief, weeping. "Thank you, thank you." As the sun fully rose, she felt it, the lifting of weight from her shoulders, the shadows that had followed her melting away. The curse was broken. 5 years later, Adanna knelt beside a grave, pulling weeds and straightening the marker. Her hair had begun to grey, her hands were permanently stained with earth, but her eyes held peace. Footsteps approached. She looked up to see Naka, now 15, carrying baby Chidi, her son, named for the grandfather he would never meet. Mama, we've come to visit. Adanna smiled, taking her grandson in her arms. The child gurgled happily, no shadows clinging to him, no curse darkening his future. He's beautiful, my daughter. He's free, Mama. We're all free, because of what you did. Adanna looked across the burial ground at all the graves she now tended with reverence and love. I did terrible things, Neka, but I learned that even the worst mistakes can lead to redemption if we're willing to face the consequences. As the sun climbed higher, Adanna returned to her work, guardian now instead of thief, protector instead of violator. The ancestors watched, and for the first time in years, they were satisfied. The woman who stole from the dead had finally learned that some debts can only be paid with truth, sacrifice, and time. The end.